The caregiver ruined a major video conferencing deal for a fading tycoon. And when the banker asked her one question, Lauren never thought she'd leave her hometown for long. She was quite comfortable there, living with her parents, a close-knit family. The house was big and well-kept, and the village itself was nice. And she had a job. She trained as a nurse. She worked at the rural hospital and was quite successful. But it was precisely at her beloved job that problems arose, forcing Lauren to leave her hometown and move to the city. The problem was embarrassing to talk about. The head of the department noticed her. He began by showing interest, then insisted on closeness. The girl, only recently hired, heard rumors that he was having affairs with some of the nurses. There were even scandals related to this, but for Lauren, it was unacceptable. She believed that if Mr. Baldwin started to make advances, she would politely refuse, and that would be it. He wasn't young anymore, married, living in their village. Why would he need extra gossip? And certainly, it wouldn't lead to violence. And it didn't. However, he wasn't backing down. And realizing that he couldn't settle things peacefully with this nurse, he started threatening. Are you stupid? Don't you want to work here? I tried to be nice to you, gave you chocolates, and now you're turning up your nose. I can return them, they're in the cupboard. I want to work, but I want to work, not what you're offering. She still hoped for this man's good sense, but, as it turned out, in vain. For such stubbornness, I'm punishing you. And not just firing you, but really firing you. I can quit on my own, trying to hold back tears of hurt, Lauren said. She was already thinking about where to go if she had to leave. She could try another department, or maybe a clinic. But no, Mr. Baldwin had other methods. And don't think you'll find another place. Whether here or somewhere else. Thanks if you don't end up behind bars. Then she took it as just the threat of an irritated man who'd been rejected, hoping he'd eventually leave her alone. But no. Very soon after that conversation, Lauren was accused of stealing and selling drugs. It was a very serious accusation. This could indeed lead to a trial, but there was no evidence, no witnesses, of course. Only an anonymous report. Rumors spread. People looked at her askance. And as a result, the young, exemplary, top-of-her-class nurse was fired on a very ugly charge. She didn't even have to dream about working in her field in her hometown anymore. And there was nowhere else to go. But she couldn't just live off her parents. And how could she explain to them why she quit a job that seemed perfectly fine? She simply lied to her father and mother, saying she was offered a job at a very good clinic in the city. They were even happy for their daughter, although they suspected that her dismissal wasn't all clean. After all, they didn't live in a metropolis. Rumors spread quickly here. But they believed her more than the rumors. And where will you live there? Worried her mother. There's a dorm, very nice. Well, if anything, I'll rent an apartment. The salary at that clinic is twice as much. Mom, don't worry, the city isn't far. I'll come to visit you often. And if something goes wrong, I'll come back. For now, everything was going terribly wrong. Of course, no one offered her any job or housing. She miraculously rented a room from some old lady at the station who offered cheap accommodation to other poor souls seeking happiness. And she started looking for any kind of job. The medical field was, of course, closed to her. Where could she go with such a record in her employment history? As Mr. Baldwin whispered on parting, no hospital will even take you to carry bedpans. She understood that perfectly well. And throwing away her employment record and saying she hadn't worked since finishing school wasn't an option either. She didn't want to waste 6 months of experience. She was afraid that somehow her reputation would be discovered in her new place. Then it would only be worse. Where else could a young girl, with no other experience and essentially no skills, find a job? She hoped to find work as a caregiver somewhere, even without official papers. Taking care of some sick person. And if she could find a job with accommodation, that would be even better. But it hadn't worked out yet. Money was running out, and she urgently needed to find something. So, passing by a cafe and seeing a sign on the door that a waitress was needed, she decided to try her luck there. The not-so-young manager or owner of this establishment, holding the applicant's passport in her hands, said displeasedly, "No experience, huh? All right. Just know, our cafe is small, we don't keep extra people. So being a waitress here isn't about batting your eyelashes and clicking your heels. You'll have to wash dishes, clean floors, and everything else. For one salary. And mark my words, no drinking, no stealing here. You won't be dining for free. I'll tell you, it won't be easy." "I don't do anything like that," said Lori. Others come and say they do," the owner smirked. The job, as she had promised, was no picnic. This was confirmed by the second waitress, who hadn't been working here for long either. "No one sticks around with this witch. They pay like charity, you almost have to kiss their hand. Do I have to pay off my loans? I can't go anywhere without a job. I'm waiting, maybe something better will come up." "That's the same for me," said Lauren, and immediately flinched from the sharp shout. "Well, who's resting over there? Why is the table not cleared?" "The Viper," whispered the colleague, running from behind the table where the customers had just left. So there was indeed a lot of running around and work, and the salary was the most modest. Barely enough to pay for the room and food. Meanwhile, the cafe wasn't the lowest tier, not a simple dive. Decent people visited it, so keeping order had to be at the highest level, and she had to look the same, and the owner made sure of that. One day during Lauren's shift at the cafe, there was almost a tragedy. One of the customers, a young man, suddenly choked. His friends, with whom he was spending time, at first thought nothing serious had happened. "Well, who hasn't choked?" They laughed, patted him on the back, and realized that it was serious. The guy suddenly started choking, turning blue, scratching his neck. "Call an ambulance. He's dying, it seems." Someone shouted. "What happened?" Lauren ran up. "Choked? All right, stand up." A competent nurse, she immediately assessed the situation, applied the Heimlich maneuver, freeing his airways. By the time the ambulance arrived, which someone had called, the young man was almost back to normal. "Thank you, miss. You're beautiful," he said, still with a hoarse voice. "Well, looks like he'll live, already checking out the girls," said the doctor who arrived on the call. The injured man didn't require any special assistance, so the doctors, after examining him, left, and soon his father arrived for him. Another visitor, a serious and respectable man, witnessed this scene. "Nicely done. I thought the lad was really done for. Where did you learn to do that?" he asked Lauren. "In nursing school. I'm actually a nurse, and I'm just here temporarily," she replied. "Oh, interesting. It just so happens that I'm looking for exactly that kind of specialist." "Well, not me, but a friend of mine. He's a businessman. A banker, but he fell ill, poor guy. And with what, nobody knows. But he needs a caregiver. And exactly someone like you, with education and quick reactions, not just someone to fetch a glass of water and look pretty, you know. He does have a wife, but without a professional." Lauren was intrigued. This was exactly what would suit her. But was this man lying? Maybe he had some bad intentions towards her? Her experience with Mr. Baldwin taught her not to trust adults and respectable people. The man noticed her confusion. "I'll leave you Mr. Edwin Carpenter's phone number, and if you're interested, give him a call, find out about all the conditions. I believe that working in this cafe, even temporarily, is not your option." He left her his business card and drove away, and Lauren spent the rest of the day contemplating whether to call this number or forget about this conversation. But in the end, she mentally scolded herself, "I don't understand what there is to think about. They're offering exactly the job you dreamed of, or at least considered it a way out. And when you found it, you got scared for some reason." First of all, she just needed to make a call. and there was nothing scary about it. And if something goes wrong, she'll just hang up. And even if during the interview with this banker he says or does something she doesn't like, who's to stop her from leaving? And in the evening, she dialed the number, explained why she was calling and where she got the phone number from. "Yes, I know," the woman who answered said, sounding displeased. "Mr. Lawson warned that you would call. Do you have education? Well, come, let's see." And she gave the address. In the morning, Lauren went to apply for this new job, once again plagued by doubts. Moreover, the voice of the stranger she spoke to didn't add any optimism. It seemed that the idea of having a caregiver in the house didn't sit well with her. She decided to act and think primarily about herself. "I don't really like being a caregiver either, even for a lot of money and for a rich person. But what can you do? These are the circumstances. And if they intend to act like masters and treat me like a servant, then it's their business. And I don't consider myself a servant or dependent person. I can quit at any moment, even without severance pay." The house where her future employer lived was located in an elite neighborhood and turned out to be, as expected, luxurious. And simply walking into it wasn't possible. First, she had to ring the bell at the gate, then pass by the guard, a young giant of a guy with the appearance of a thug. When Lauren told him why she was here, he snorted and eyed her up and down in a way she didn't like at all. Well, here we go. Problems start right at the gate. He's looking at me like some kind of merchandise too. And, by the way, he's just an employee himself, Lauren thought. She first spoke not with her future ward, but with his wife. A fairly young and quite beautiful woman, if it weren't for the arrogant expression on her face. And not for the manipulation she clearly did with that face. The lips were unnaturally large, and the cheeks were strangely sunken. The future mistress didn't appeal to Lauren. And it was noticeable that she didn't like this woman either. "My name is Stephanie Carpenter. I am Mr. Carpenter's wife, for whom you will be caring. I'll say it right away, you're not the first caregiver, because he's not very seriously ill, but quite demanding. And I don't forgive any mistakes either. How serious is his illness, and what is it expressed in? Can he walk at all?" Lauren asked. "He can walk, talk, eat on his own, and go to the bathroom. So there's no need to do anything unpleasant. And he's in his right mind. He even still works. True, from home, remotely. But he is seriously ill, and he has strange attacks. Besides, he needs to take his medication on time. And most importantly, you need to adjust him accordingly. He doesn't really want to be treated. Well, I mean, you'll also have to provide him with some psychological support." "Okay, I'm ready for that. Can I meet the patient?" "Well, of course." Stephanie led Lauren through the entire large house to Mr. Carpenter's office, explaining along the way. "Monica, the housekeeper, will acquaint you with the house and our rules, but that's later, if you please, Mr. Carpenter himself, with whom you will mainly communicate. I, as you can understand, don't have much time to guide you through everything." Of course, you're busy, Lauren thought unfriendly. Probably spend all day in the salons. However, this was even good. She didn't really want to interact with this woman. The future ward greeted her more warmly, but also didn't fail to mention that she wasn't the first caregiver because he still had requirements. "The fact that you're a nurse is wonderful, of course. Mr. Lawson, who saw you at the cafe, told me how skillfully you handled the problem that arose. I don't have such problems, but others do occur." "What illness do you have?" Lauren asked. "That's the thing. Doctors themselves can't determine my illness, or they don't want to. I don't really trust those doctors. Either they don't know or can't do anything, or they deliberately make up problems to extort money from me. I have it, you understand. And it doesn't work well on some of them. Do doctors often come to you? Maybe I should talk to them?" "Very rarely. Only when I call them myself. And I repeat, don't really like it, and I don't think it makes sense for you." "What to talk to them about?" "They leave some medications. They're right there. You can read for yourself when and how to take them. But, frankly, I don't think they're of any use. I've been sick for almost a year now, and no one can make any sense of it. Or even say clearly what's happening to me. That alone speaks against the doctors. But at the moment, you suit me, so you can stay. Go to the kitchen, meet the housekeeper, she'll offer you coffee and show you your room, and also tell you about the rules in the house. However, don't listen to her too much, she may say too much. You know, workers don't always like their bosses. Lauren nodded and went to get acquainted with the house and the housekeeper, who apparently would be her only colleague, aside from the guard. But she wanted to communicate with him least of all. The first impression was enough. The elderly, stern-looking woman, named Monica, poured the girl coffee and sighed. Ah, another one fell into the hands of our employers, she chuckled. No, I'm not scaring you. People, they may not be bad, but these caregivers flutter around them like pigeons. They haven't even settled in yet, they're already out the door. What's wrong there, I don't know. Sometimes the master is dissatisfied with something, sometimes the mistress. As if she has any business asking? She hangs around somewhere all day, but apparently afraid that someone will notice something extra. They don't bother me, and they won't touch me either. I've been working here for a long time, and I know my business, and I know how to keep my mouth shut. But you, young ones, can be foolish. What's wrong with the master? I still don't understand. What's he sick with? Lauren asked. Well, he doesn't even know himself. And the doctors don't really say anything useful either. They treat him for one thing, then another. But, you know, these doctors. Mr. Carpenter himself doesn't really like them either. It's understandable, he's a businessman. For him, it's strange when someone doesn't understand their job. Besides, he's used to being in charge. Demanding things from people. But he doesn't understand that his business is about money and numbers or whatever else. It's harder for doctors. They need to understand what's going on inside a person and try to figure that out. He doesn't understand that. He talks to them like they're his subordinates. The last time a doctor came, he seemed smart, kind of old already. But he yelled at him. The doctor, of course, got offended and left. And who's going to treat him like that? If you don't know how to talk to people and listen to them, then you'll just keep getting sicker. From this speech, Lauren understood that she was in for a tough job. And not a pleasant one, apparently, despite the fact that the patient seems to be able to take care of himself and there are no obvious signs of illness in him. Yes, he's pale, you can see he's lost weight recently, but what exactly is wrong? And she's not a doctor, just a nurse, and she can't make diagnoses. Especially since they don't really tell her anything useful. Well, at least they took her. She had the opportunity to work and earn decent money. Her salary was indeed set higher than what she would get in a hospital or cafe. So, she needed to hold on to this position for as long as possible until she too would be dismissed like those pigeons. She was allocated a room in the house. She moved in and began to fulfill her duties, ensuring that the patient ate on time and took the prescribed medications. Very soon, Lauren realized he not only doesn't really trust doctors, he's downright afraid of them. And as for trust, it seems the master doesn't trust anyone at all. Why are you giving me these pills? The doctor prescribed them, but what good are his prescriptions? Sometimes I think I get sicker from these medications than from the illness itself, even though I don't understand where it came from. Have you undergone any tests at the hospital? You need to get some tests done. Oh, thank you, wise nurse. Do you really think I haven't? Of course I have. They prodded every inch of me. I gave them a bucket of blood. They suspected everything in me. And nothing, really. One says one thing, another says another. But the result? There's no result at all. And, by the way, I need to work. I can't be without work. If I leave it for a minute, you understand, anything can happen. And besides, it seems that work is what heals me the most. Well, I agree with you on that. Work is the main thing. But still, it wouldn't hurt you to trust the people who want to help you more. You're still young. I've lived, worked, seen all sorts of things. You can't trust anyone too much. That's the main thing life has taught me. Especially if you have money. Doctors, they're people too. They see that a person is wealthy. So they'll treat him until he's cured. It's in their interest for me to stay sick longer. And keep paying them for their treatment. But you're wrong about that, Lauren objected. Doctors want to save you. It's just that you don't allow them to figure out your condition. I'm sorry to say that. I forgive you, of course. But it's easiest to blame everything on the patient himself, Mr. Carpenter said irritably. However, Lori settled into this house. She saw that her patient's wife was rather dissatisfied with this, but couldn't understand the reason. Just as she couldn't understand what was really happening. As the owner said, he hadn't been sick before. He had always been healthy, energetic, and worked a lot. But now, and his illness clearly wasn't somatic. It seemed that some frightening changes were taking place in his body. And the further along, the clearer Lauren understood something external was affecting his body. Perhaps he was eating something harmful. But there didn't seem to be anything like that. Mr. Carpenter was calm about food and didn't consume anything harmful. Lauren never managed to meet with the doctors. So, one day she decided to talk about it with Stephanie. Who, if not she, would be most interested in her husband's life and health? But she paid no attention to the caregiver's words and angrily cut her off every time she tried to talk about something serious. Do you want to get fired? I can arrange that for you quickly. He's being treated by doctors, professors, and now some nurse is butting in. But there haven't been any doctors around for a while, Lauren timidly objected. That's none of your concern. Are you giving him the medicine? Then keep doing that. But don't meddle in what's not your business. So Lauren didn't meddle. But for some reason, she felt sorry for the owner. And she couldn't understand why his condition was worsening, despite taking all the medications strictly on schedule. She tried to talk about it with Monica, but she didn't want to hear anything, repeating the same thing. You'd live more peacefully if you didn't meddle. You need the money yourself, you need a place to live. So hold on to this job, or else. All this raised unpleasant thoughts in Lauren. Clearly, something was wrong with this family, especially with the owner's illness. And one day her suspicions found a very real basis. She overheard a conversation between the mistress and the security guard, which also gave her very unpleasant feelings. The hostess, on the other hand, was friendly with him. That time, Stephanie invited him into the house, into her room, to have coffee. While Lauren was in the next room trying to make sense of Mr. Carpenter's medical records. Oh, Stephanie, you know, I'm tired of waiting. How much longer will you keep dealing with this sick man? Oh, stop it, Joel, it'll be over soon, literally in a few days. He has to close one deal, very unfavorable for him, and then all the money will go into my account, and that's it. Let him keep getting sick, getting treatment, or even die in a nursing home. You and I can calmly leave. Lauren felt like she'd been doused with cold water. So, that's what it was all about. She had suspected before that the mistress was less concerned about her husband's health than about some of her own affairs. But she tried not to delve into it. And it turned out to be much worse than she could have imagined. So, the closest person, the wife, is not interested in Mr. Carpenter's recovery at all, but, on the contrary, wants to strip him and leave. And with whom? With this security guard. And what should she, Lauren, do, having become a witness to such a conversation? Just forget about it? No, that would be cruel to the sick man. Such an action by his wife could undermine him altogether. Tell? But that would mean she's meddling in other people's affairs. Moreover, there's no guarantee that Mr. Carpenter would believe. And maybe she misunderstood everything? There was absolutely no one she could consult with. It would be quite awkward to openly talk to the owner about this conversation she simply overheard. Eavesdropping is not nice. How could she prevent him from going through with this deal? How could she disrupt the plans of the owner's wife? She tried to subtly suggest to Mr. Carpenter that he shouldn't get too deeply involved in work right now. How about you take a little break today? Lauren cheerfully suggested on the day when he was supposed to have a video call with partners offering him a failed deal. Let's just take a walk in the garden, then sit down and read something uplifting. That's something extraordinary you've come up with, he said in surprise. But today, of all days, I can't afford any breaks. I have very important events. But that's exactly what you need right now, a break from work. Your blood pressure is fluctuating, and you look very tired. You yourself said you're getting exhausted. Of course I'm getting tired. But that doesn't mean I should drop everything. I'm telling you, I have an important event today. If it goes well, then we can have that vacation any other day. But what if it doesn't work out? Let me tell you what I'm afraid of. What if because of this overexertion, you mess up this deal somehow, and that makes you even more upset, and your physical condition depends on it? Oh, don't make things up. My condition doesn't improve from anything, but a successfully closed deal will definitely improve it. And there can't be any mistakes, I've planned everything. Don't forget, darling, you're talking to someone who's been doing this for years. I've been around the block with this. The owner was starting to get irritated by her persistence. I'm sorry, Lauren said, realizing that all her efforts were in vain. However, she wasn't going to leave them alone and did something else. During the negotiations, Lori accidentally damaged the internet cable, thus ruining the negotiations and the conclusion of the deal. She knew very well that this would likely lead to her dismissal, and she decided that after that, she would definitely tell the owner about the conversation she overheard. Then she would have nothing to fear. Mr. Carpenter was indeed furious when he realized whose fault it was that the important business he had been preparing for a whole month fell through. When he found out who was the cause of all the trouble, he lashed out at Lori. Why did you do this? Can you explain? I didn't mean to, she said, flustered. I didn't want to do anything, I just. You've ruined a deal I've been preparing for a whole month. And what am I supposed to do now if the partners don't want to continue doing business with me? But much more furious than Mr. Carpenter himself was his wife. You witch! I knew she would do something like this. Don't you understand? She deliberately got hired here to harm you. These caretakers of yours are nothing but trouble. She's probably sent by your competitors. Wait, she'll cause even more trouble. The wife yelled in anger. Get out of here immediately. Get out of the house, troublemaker. And you won't get any money. Fine. Lauren sighed. She had been preparing for such outcomes. But suddenly Mr. Carpenter himself stopped her. Hold on, why are you leaving? And Stephanie, I don't understand, why are you so upset? I haven't lost anything, but you certainly have. You'll understand what you've lost when we're both out on the street. And you're even defending that snake. You lost reliable partners, do you understand that? His wife couldn't calm down. I understand perfectly. You don't understand anything about business. And these partners, well, they're not the last ones on earth. So let's calm down, and you go to your room. Lauren, stay. When Stephanie, still angrily blaming everyone, stormed off, he said to the girl, I believe you didn't do it on purpose. And I really want to double-check the deal again. Maybe you even helped me with your actions. And anyway, I wouldn't want you to resign. For some reason, I trust you more than the others. Well, it wasn't an empty compliment from a man who doesn't trust anyone. It truly touched her. Lauren even cried. She thanked the owner for deciding to give her a second chance, not firing her for such a blunder, and finally told him about the conversation she overheard with the security guard. Surprisingly, Mr. Carpenter wasn't particularly surprised. So, here's the thing. Well, something like this I expected. However, for certain reasons, I can't do anything right now. I'll just suspend any deals and see what comes of it. Without my knowledge, Stephanie won't be able to do anything, no matter how much she wants to. Lori stayed in the house. Although she perfectly understood that the owner would now especially hate her. And perhaps she would try, somehow, if not to survive, then to set her up, discredit her. And in this way, prove to her husband that the caregiver is plotting against him. She decided to take a different approach, namely to find out, without the knowledge of the attending physicians, what the cause of Mr. Carpenter's illness was. To do this, Lauren took his blood for analysis and decided to take it to an independent laboratory. With the patient's blood samples, she went to a clinic where nobody knew him. But she didn't know who to turn to herself. She decided to ask at the reception desk. "Hello, can I get a blood test done for a patient who hasn't been seen here before?" The receptionist looked up at her in surprise. "How so?" "Just to give blood to the laboratory so they can find out why he's sick." "Are you kidding, girl? If someone is sick, they should see a doctor. And this isn't a free-for-all courtyard where anyone can come in and get tests done and get some conclusions." "But I'll pay," Lauren tried to convince the stern administrator. "Oh, really? And what are you going to pay there? Everyone will come and put who knows what in the lab for testing, saying it's very simple. We have enough of our own patients here." Lauren, sighing, was about to leave, but then a young doctor overheard the conversation. He approached, asked what the matter was. The receptionist tried to explain to him in her mocking manner. "Well, Mr. Bennett, some lady from the street showed up, brought who knows what. Examine it, research it, but why, is unclear." The doctor stopped her and asked Lori to explain what was going on. "You see, I'm a nurse myself. I work as a caregiver for someone. He's very sick, but nobody understands the cause. And I think it might be poisoning. So I brought his blood to be examined." Interesting. "Well, let me take a look." "I'll pay," the relieved girl hastened to assure him. "Hold on with your payment. Let's see first what you have there." A couple of days later, Mr. Bennett called her back. And his tone was very serious. "You know, you're right. Your patient has been poisoned with a fairly serious toxin. If the correct treatment is not started immediately, he won't live long. And most importantly, the tests need to be taken from you as well. Perhaps the poisonous substance is somewhere in the house. And if treatment isn't started immediately, the consequences will affect you too." Lauren agreed and hurriedly went to the clinic for the report and to also have her blood tested. After submitting all the necessary documents and receiving Mr. Carpenter's results, she rushed home to inform him of what had happened and to give him the opportunity to start treatment immediately. But she didn't make it home. On the way, she was stopped by the police. It turned out that while Lauren was not at home, a robbery occurred, and the owner claimed that the theft was most likely committed by her husband's caregiver. Meanwhile, Mr. Carpenter's condition deteriorated sharply. In this, the wife also blamed Lauren. "Do you see what she's done? Gained my husband's trust, deliberately harmed him, and then decided to poison and rob him altogether. How could I not notice her constantly disappearing somewhere? Surely she conspired with someone. She needs to be stopped immediately. Question her, preferably put her in prison for a long time." When Lauren was brought to the precinct and presented with all the accusations, she tried to prove that she was, on the contrary, seeking ways to save the owner. She showed the tests she had done, but it didn't help her. Poisoned him and made the tests yourself to later frame someone else? The investigator said sternly. She's confessing to everything herself. Our signature move applies, and in half an hour, she'll sing like a nightingale, another suggested. You think it's worth it? Why not? She's not being accused of stealing candy bars. All right, we'll have to. Because the girl, it's obvious she's not simple. She'll play the sheet perfectly. Let's take her to that very cell. Lauren was horrified. They were going to put her behind bars. She would be in some cell with criminals. And now she was being led down the corridor. Led to the cell, the door opened, and she was shoved inside. Lauren heard enthusiastic male voices. "Oh, thanks, boss. What a new toy we've got." Yes, it turned out to be even worse than she feared. They didn't put her with female inmates, but with male convicts. That was their signature move. Lauren pressed herself in horror against the door that had closed behind her, looking at the terrifying inmates filling the room. Some had already stood up and were moving towards her. She realized something terrible awaited her, and there was no one to protect her. "No, please, don't," she cried plaintively, but several people were already approaching her with carnivorous smiles. "Stop, stop." A stern voice suddenly rang out. A middle-aged, tough-looking man rose from one of the bunks, seeming familiar to her. The others obediently stopped and returned to their places. "I remember you. You're a nurse, right?" said the stern convict, probably the leader in this cell. "Yes," Lauren mumbled, not understanding how he could know her and where she might have seen him. "Look at that, I recognized you. I've got a memory. I'm the father of that guy you saved at the cafe. Remember?" He choked on something. "Wanted to thank you later, but you had already quit. And then they locked me up too. Sit next to me. They won't touch you, don't be afraid. And I certainly won't. We know how to be grateful too." The inmates grumbled disapprovingly, but agreed. Lori timidly sat on the edge of her defender's bunk. He indeed turned out to be the eldest and most authoritative in the cell. "What did they pin you for? You're not one of those types, are you?" "A good Samaritan," the convict asked. Trembling and crying, Lauren told her story. "Well, that's a situation," he agreed. "Got anyone to call? Someone to help get you out of here if you're really innocent?" "No one at all," she sobbed. "And they took my phone too." "We'll find a phone, no problem, if someone's got a number to dial." "Well, don't you have any acquaintances in the city? Call that sick guy, he might know something. He's not really in the loop. And it's quite possible he'll believe his wife, not me. Besides, he's worse off now, probably not thinking about me at all. Maybe that doctor, you know, the one I gave the tests to. Maybe he'll say something or confirm that I didn't poison him. Why would I bother getting blood tests if I was the one poisoning him? Do you remember the doctor's number?" The inmate produced a phone from somewhere. "Well, of course not," Lauren cried again, but then she suddenly realized. "Here it is." And she pulled out a piece of paper from her pocket on which she had written down the clinic's number. "Then call them, quickly now. Explain the situation, maybe they can help." When Mr. Bennett reached the phone, Lauren quickly told him about the situation she was in. He understood everything and was not indifferent. "All right, wait, I'll come to this precinct and explain what I can do," he said. Norman didn't deceive her. He arrived at the precinct fairly quickly and gave his testimony, stating that Lauren had indeed come, given blood for tests, which revealed poison. And Mr. Carpenter had been poisoned long before Lauren started working for them. "I, of course, don't understand anything about this case yet, haven't looked into it. But I'm sure the girl is innocent. She really wanted to save her patient, not poison him. She should be released. And the patient needs to be hospitalized urgently, taken from home, despite the protests of those who are currently trying to finish what they started." Lauren was brought in for interrogation again. The investigator began questioning her about all the circumstances of the case anew. And this time she didn't remain silent. She told them everything she knew. "So, are they letting you go?" "Congratulations. How are you feeling?" Norman asked sympathetically, taking her arm. "Terrible," Lauren sank weakly onto the bench. "My legs won't hold me. You can't imagine what I've been through." "Yeah, I don't really want to imagine." "Well, sit for a bit, catch your breath, and I'll tell you some news that might cheer you up." The first good news is that there's no poison in your blood. And the second, I found your relative, the doctor said with a smile. That there's no poison is great news. I'm very glad. But what relative? I know all of mine. I don't have that many, Lauren replied, slightly intrigued. You see, your blood is quite rare, the same as Mr. Carpenter's. That got me interested. I did a DNA test, and it turns out you're relatives. Probably not the closest, let's say, an uncle and niece. Did your parents have any brothers or sisters they lost somehow? Yes, Lauren said, astonished. My mom had a brother she was separated from in childhood, in an orphanage. His name was Eddie. Mom often talks about him. Well, most likely, that very brother has been found. You can make your mom happy. And him too. It's a joy to find a sister. Are you serious? Such a coincidence can't be possible. No, this can't be happening. Lauren couldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it myself if someone had told me. But I can't doubt the documents. Okay, but what about Mr. Carpenter now? Lori asked anxiously. Can he be cured? I heard he's gotten worse. Yes, he has. But he's already in the clinic now. He's being treated specifically for what made him sick. I mean, they're giving him the antidote. I hope they catch the poisoners themselves, although I don't know about that. But we should leave here. The atmosphere in this building is oppressive. Do you feel better? Yes, a little easier. Lauren was indeed distracted from her distress thanks to this respite, and, of course, the news about her mom's brother. I would like to visit him, let him know. Surely he'll be happy that his sister has been found. We'll definitely go. If you want, right now. My car is not far from here. Shall we? Getting into Norman's car, Lauren suddenly stopped holding back and burst into hysterical tears. Oh, come on. Don't. It's all over now. Nothing bad will happen to you anymore. The doctor, anticipating something like this, had stocked up on water and sedatives. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I tried to hold it together, but it was so scary. You can't imagine what could have happened to me there. Those were animals, not people. And the police too. And they say nothing would have happened. Why were they like that to me? Lauren was shaking again. That's all. No need, please. The sooner you forget about it, the better. Shall we go meet your uncle? Norman tried to change the subject. I would really like to, but first I need to freshen up, change my clothes. I probably smell like jail. And all my things are at Mr. Carpenter's house. Uncle Eddie, unbelievable. And how happy Mom will be. She often talked about her brother. But I probably can't go to his house now. It's sealed, isn't it? And it's quite far to drive. Well, if you want, let's go to my place. You can freshen up just fine, and there'll be clothes too. Lauren pondered. The offer was a good one and came from someone who had saved her. But for a girl who had experienced so many terrible shocks recently, it was hard to trust even the most friendly person. Especially since he, apparently, doesn't live alone. And how will the person whose clothes he's offering react to her arrival? She didn't need conflicts with another woman on top of everything else. That's roughly what she said to Mr. Bennett. Won't the owner of the clothes be against it? No, she won't mind, he replied almost calmly. So, shall we go? From his tone and the phrase itself, Lauren understood that something terrible had happened in his life. And she just nodded, agreeing. On the way, Mr. Bennett dryly, almost blandly, told her, apparently to avoid further questions. I once had a family, a wife and a son, and then a terrible accident happened. My wife died, my son survived, but has been disabled ever since. Oh God, and here I am complaining about some troubles. And there are really plenty of good people around me who practically carry me out of any trouble, not to mention that I'm alive and well. And then I'm sorry, she touched Norman's sleeve. I'm very sorry for you. But your boy, he's alive and, hopefully, he'll recover. Is he little? 5 years old. His name is Stuart. It's possible to cure him, but he needs surgery. I'm raising money for it now. It's not easy. I hope everything will be all right. It can't be any other way. Yes, most likely, Norman replied. At his home, he introduced her to Stewie, a slender boy who moved around in a wheelchair. The little one was happy to meet a new acquaintance. The lack of communication was taking its toll on him. But at some point, Norman said, "All right, Auntie needs to freshen up and change." And he escorted Lauren to the bathroom, where he brought his wife's clean clothes. These are all new. Sammy didn't even get a chance to wear them. Lori was grateful for such clarification. At first, she thought it would be cruel to go to the boy just like that, wearing his deceased mother's clothes. And it would be hard for Norman too. Moreover, it turned out that their sizes were more or less the same. Whether she reminded the father and son of their forever lost mother and wife, they didn't show it. But she herself felt some awkwardness in front of the portrait of the young, beautiful woman hanging on the wall. The black ribbon crossing the corner made it clear who it was. But Lauren happily chatted with Stewie, who showed her his toys and talked about how he would be able to walk and go to kindergarten when he got better. And the guest encouraged him in this belief. Then they went to the clinic. Mr. Carpenter was feeling slightly better and was pleased to see Lauren. "Well, hello, my savior." He smiled at her. She decided not to delay with the main news. "And I came to you, Mr. Carpenter, not only with oranges, but also with a question. And depending on the answer, with news. I hope it's joyful. Tell me, did you have a sister named Abigail?" "Abby?" exclaimed the banker. "Yes, I did. We got separated in childhood. Why do you ask? Have you found her? I've always wanted to meet her someday." "Well, it's possible. Because I'm her daughter. I mean, your niece." And she told him about the results of the tests conducted by Norman. My God. The man almost cried with joy. "Lori, you won't believe it, but I felt a kindred spirit in you right away. I didn't want to let you go, remember? And Abigail? Where is she? When can I see her?" "As soon as you recover. She doesn't live in town. I'm from the countryside. Mom doesn't know anything yet, but she also remembers you perfectly well and always told me about her little brother, whom she was separated from in the orphanage after our parents died in a car accident. She searched for you, missed you so much, but they said you were already given up for adoption." "Yes, that's how it was. I was 4 at the time and I remember everything, and I understood back then. I cried, begged for them to bring me my sister, but the adoptive parents weren't interested. They only wanted a boy. No, I'm grateful to them, they did a lot for me, but Abigail, my sister, my own, how was she living? They didn't adopt her, so she lived in the orphanage. Obviously, it's not as good as with parents, even foster ones, but if she's upset about anything, it's only about being taken away to Eddie, that is, you. She's just 2 years older, who would listen to her? Sent to the orphanage, and that's it. But overall, she's doing well now, she's grown up, got married to Dad, they live well. Oh, she'll be so happy, you can't even imagine. Please recover soon, we'll all go together to see each other, you'll be happy too." "Yes, that would be wonderful. And please, don't tell her ahead of time. Let her not come here until I'm better. I'll come straight healthy. Now that would be a surprise. I wonder if we'll recognize each other." They talked some more. And Mr. Carpenter promised to recover very soon. He was eager to see his sister. When Lauren left the room, Mr. Bennett, waiting outside the door, asked, "So, how did the meeting go? Was your uncle happy?" You can't imagine to what extent. For a moment, he looked like a little boy. He remembers everything and loves Mom just as much as she loves him. And he'll be discharged soon. I can't wait to organize this meeting. I talked to his attending physician. It seems like he's making a full recovery. So it won't be long now. Lauren had to go to the investigative committee again to give testimony about her work for Mr. Carpenter. She knew that Stephanie and the security guard had already been arrested, and they had confessed to everything. Yes, they were lovers and had long planned to get rid of the owner, seizing all his property and money. The slow-acting poison was prepared by the security guard himself, who, it turns out, had some knowledge of chemistry and connections at pharmaceutical warehouses. But this concerned Lori and Mr. Carpenter little. They were already living in a new future. Until Mr. Carpenter was discharged, Lauren and Norman met constantly. They visited her uncle, talked to the doctors, and spent time with Stewie. They played with him at home or took him for walks in the park. When the banker was finally discharged, they all went to the village to Lauren's parents together. Nervously, she entered the house first to somehow prepare her mother for the upcoming joy. "Mom, I'm not alone. I have a surprise for you. You definitely didn't expect this." Abigail had already seen from the window that Lauren had arrived in a car, from which two men, one young and one older, had gotten out. She thought Lori had brought a fiancé with his father, and they were here for an engagement. Pale, she rushed to her daughter. "Why didn't you warn me? I haven't prepared anything. I'm not even dressed." "Who does that?" "Mom, don't worry. It's not what you think. Come in," she called the guests. "Hello, Abigail," Mr. Carpenter said quietly, his voice breaking. "Eddie," the hostess exclaimed, clutching her heart. Yes, brother and sister recognized each other immediately and were happy to meet after many years. They talked for a long time about their own things. Meanwhile, Lauren set the table. Norman didn't wait, he left. His son was waiting at home. The nanny didn't stay overnight, she was a visiting nurse. Everyone was happy and promised each other to become one family. "And the one who left, is he your fiancé, Lauren?" asked her mother. "At first, I thought they came to propose to you." "No," blushing, the daughter replied. "He's an acquaintance, a doctor, Norman. He helped both of us, me and Uncle. He's very nice. And not only that, he helped us meet. That is, he found out that we're relatives. You can't imagine how grateful I am to him. And how to repay him, huh? Offering money seems awkward. You know, maybe it's just right?" Lori suddenly realized. He needs money, urgently. And she told them about the tragedy in Mr. Bennett's family. About how Stewie needed surgery. "Well, then, there's a reason to help a good person without offending him. So, I'll find out everything tomorrow and organize the operation. I'll cover all the expenses. It's not right for the son of such a person to be in a wheelchair." Mr. Carpenter kept his word. And soon the treatment of little Stewie was started. Lauren was always there, at the hospital. During the treatment, the boy grew very close to her. The operation was successful. Stewie faced rehabilitation, which also promised to be trouble-free. The boy tried hard, eager to return to normal life. Once he said to his father, "You see, Dad, everything's almost like it used to be. And I'm almost walking. And I almost have a mom." Norman guessed what he was asking about. "You want Lauren to be your mom?" "Well, yeah. Don't you like her?" "I like her very much." And it was true. Lauren and Norman had indeed grown close during this ordeal. At another family celebration organized by Lauren's parents, they arrived together. Norman proposed to her in front of her father, mother, and beloved uncle. Of course, she accepted. And at the wedding, Stewie solemnly held the bride's veil. He could walk perfectly well and even dance.